All right, and then today, as promised, we have with us Gary Prestia, who's the Chief Underwriting Officer for North America. Gary is with Flagstone Reinsurance Company based in Bermuda. He's been a good friend of mine for a number of years, and we're pleased to be able to interview him, talk a little bit about Flagstone's underwriting strategy, as well as some of the logic behind these numbers. So Gary, how are you doing today?
Oh, doing fine, Frank. Thank you very much. It's great to be on the call with you this afternoon.
No, it's very good. Our pleasure. Listen, I just had to notice because the numbers were coming out of Bermuda from a number of your peers, and certainly none of them were like yours. Maybe can you talk a little bit about that? Why did you have such success this quarter?
Sure. Well, certainly our underwriting results were very strong this quarter, and we were pleased with those results from the underwriting side. And I would note that that was really driven by our fundamental underwriting results over the first half and specifically the second quarter, rather than reserve releases from prior periods. Being a relatively newer company,
good point to notice.
Prior reserves. And I would really attribute that to three things. We were really able to intelligently grow the business. As you've noted, we did increase the gross written premium during the quarter by about 50%, and for the first 6 months of the year by about 32%, at a combined ratio in the 70s. And that really was a result of the network of offices that we've established around the world, including such places as Switzerland, Dubai, Puerto Rico, and now South Africa and Mumbai, of additional locations, in addition to the main CAT hub that we have here in Hamilton, Bermuda. Secondly, we were able to really capitalize on the existing relationships that we've been able to form over the course of the last 3 years. And I would say that a good amount of the growth did, in fact, come from the existing business relationships. And then lastly, we have become noted for providing some industry-leading service. Matter of fact, Reactions Magazine, in their U.S. awards, have noticed us amongst the top 3 of P&C reinsurers in the U.S., which we're very pleased to have been on that short list in a very short amount of time. And I did note that was based on some of the service that we provided, and it was certainly very pleasing to be included in that list in such a short time frame.
Well, we noticed that. The other thing that we noticed in your numbers as well is while a number of reinsurers saw their combined ratios decrease, nobody came close to a 19.7% drop. How did you manage that? I mean, there were claims coming in. Every other headline is that it was a record claims period.
Well, again, it was, I think, a very solid underwriting result overall. The level of CAT activity that we recorded in the second half, the second quarter of this year, was certainly lighter than what was experienced last year. For example, with Flagstone, the largest event that we had in the second quarter of this year was the Chinese winter storm loss, and that was about $14.5 million. Whereas last year, in the second quarter of 2007, we did record UK flood losses of approximately $30 million, and the New South Wales, Australian flood loss of about $24 million. So I do have to at least chalk some of that up, Frank, to the fact that there was less international CAT activity in the second quarter of this year than there was in the comparable period last year. And that's really where most of the underlying difference came from, was from the lower level of CAT activity that was included in the results this year.
Let me ask you this. I know you to be a very disciplined guy, and back when you were with Convarium and Transatlantic, I always know that you ran a very disciplined ship. But certainly as one of the younger reinsurers out there involved in a war, if you will, with the Titans and the Giants, in an arena where reinsurance premium pricing is flat to be most charitable, are you ever tempted to break ranks and just start going out and writing to intake some more money on a cash flow kind of basis? I mean, how do you ward against that temptation?
Well, thank you, certainly, Frank, for the comments about my earlier background, and certainly I think a lot of that training that I received back then with those companies certainly is reflected in the results that Flagstone has had as well. And I would certainly say that, one, we don't write to any internal premium target, so there's certainly no pressure to write for sake of writing business, and we don't set a premium budget per se. What we focus on really is the bottom line of return on equity, net income, and ultimately diluted book value per share for our shareholders. So what it essentially means in a softening market is that we have to review a whole lot more business to find that select amount which actually meets our hurdle criteria. So we are underwriting to a return on equity approach, both minimum and target. And what we find is that in a softening market, we have to double, if not triple, the amount of business, particularly new business, that we see in order to find anything that we think is attractive enough to write. And of course, we do rely fairly heavily on organic growth of our existing business, which generally produces much more attractive results, both from a loss and combined ratio perspective.
How do you...
That new business essentially doesn't perform as well. So that's really how we've been able to both grow and do it in a very intelligent, disciplined way.
In order to get that kind of throughput, Gary, even for review purposes, how do you send that message out to your producers, to your brokers?
Well, essentially we've done it through people on the ground. That is, despite being a very young company, we now have over 300 staff around the world. And what that has meant is that in many of the locations, and I mentioned some of the offices that we recently established, it means that we do have local underwriters, local people on the ground, applying a very consistent pricing and underwriting approach. That is, the business, despite where it's sourced around the world, is being priced and underwritten in a very consistent way. So it does rely on the local expertise. It does rely on that local relationship in order to get the business in the door, which we think generates a lot more opportunities that way, while at the same time providing a standard and consistent approach to the way that we evaluate and price the business. So that's really the discipline that's applied, and that's how we've been able.
Well, you've got a great business plan, and you're in with some pretty smart guys, obviously, with David Brown and Mark Burns. So it sounds like it's going pretty well.
Thank you very much. It's been, I think we'll attribute it both, hopefully, to a combination of some very good underwriting and some good fortune and good luck as well. So
there is always that element of luck, is there not? Let me ask you a question about luck. I mean, this is a flat time in the market, yet there is not the I guess the expected dearth of activity in the capital markets arena. They're still knocking on the door of our industry, trying to get in, and I think that even Flagstone has paid attention to that when you set up Valet Re, and I guess I'm just wondering a little bit, how do you see that playing out? I mean, you talk to any person in the street and they'll say, oh, well, in 10 years' time, the capital markets are going to comprise 50% of the entire reinsurance market. And then you have other people saying, well, no, that's not going to happen. What's simply going to happen is that money is simply going to invest in new reinsurers. Do you have any personal or corporate thoughts you could share?
Sure, and I certainly think that we have seen growth in very specific areas for the capital markets. It has been in the cat bonds and in special purpose vehicles, such as sidecar capacity. And what I think we're seeing right now is that the cat bonds have continued, and we do place value in that. You had noted already that we had recently, during the second quarter, completed Valet Re, which is an indemnity-based global cover, providing us with about $104 million of limit over the course of the next 3 years. And the reason that's been attractive for us is it's indemnity-based, based on our own loss and our own portfolio. It's secure cover for the next 3 years, and it's fully collateralized. So comparing that with traditional retrocessional coverage, which is largely unavailable to that extent and for that pricing, we found it very attractive. And therefore, I do think we'll continue to see the capital markets in that space, in that area, where they do play a valuable role. So I tend to think that will continue to be well defined over the near term, over the next 3 to 5 years. I see that as probably being limited to more like a number of 20% or less of the overall amount of business that's placed in the market. I don't see that. That statement about potentially being as much as 50% 10 years out being probable. To me, that number would seem pretty aggressive. But I do think there's a space in this business and a use for the capital markets. I do think they find our business attractive right now, certainly in the sense of comparison with other opportunities that they have for investment. And they're probably more willing to take their chances with Mother Nature as far as hurricanes and earthquakes than clearly the types of losses that have flown through due to subprime fallout. So
Oh,
I think
that's
it
for
is
sure.
an attractive space, and that's why they're continuing to express the interest. But I think that will continue to be in fairly well-defined areas.
Well, one final note. We have some very good friends out in Cyprus, and I noticed that they're apparently you're very good friends as well at Alliance Re. What are you guys doing with them?
That is correct. Well, we're in the process. We had now announced at the end of the first quarter that we had entered into an agreement to acquire a minority interest in Alliance Re of Cyprus, and we are in fact in the process of concluding that this quarter. So, certainly as that is finally completed, we'll make that announcement. But it is very much a relationship that we're looking forward to. It does give us additional access to both existing business as well as new business opportunities in the MENA region, and it will also allow Alliance to operate with the support of a larger reinsurer that has modeling capabilities and hopefully additional relationships that we can bring to the table. So we're very excited about that new relationship and where it'll lead us, and it does give us another good foothold in a developing region of the world.
Well, good for you, Gary. We're happy to hear this news, and we certainly know that our viewers are, because Flagstone stories are always of interest. We get a lot of comments on them. So,
well, thank you very much, Frank. It's always a pleasure chatting with you.
Thank you for taking the time today.
Look forward to